Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Paranormal Karen. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you all are having a good day. I'm going to do some business up front before I get to my guest, Jim Perry. It is, again, if you all would like an audio copy of last year's Paranormal Karen Tarot stand-up comedy show with Lamont Ferguson, just send me an email. You know, I've been saying do a screenshot, and I think everyone's getting confused. And so just email me, hey, I gave you a 5-star review. It's okay if you're lying. I'll send you a free download, or you can buy it for $9.99. And also, let's see. I'll do the rest at the end. If you can leave me a review, if you want to sponsor the show, if you want to be an ad on the show, all that stuff at Karen Rontowski or paranormalkaren.com. Let's get to my guest. I am here with my new friend, Jim Perry. Hey, Jim, good to have you on.
Great to be here. I'm so excited to talk with you today. We're going to go deep down a rabbit hole, I'm sure.
Oh, I love it. And I got an email and somebody was like, you got to check out this podcast, and it's called Euphomet. I said it right, didn't I?
You did, indeed.
Awesome. And my listeners know I'm dyslexic, so I kind of screw up anything. They know to sort of hold their breath when I say, I'm going to read this newspaper article because I know I get half the things wrong. Fantastic, fantastic new podcast. And the thing that I've been listening to it, and I want you to sort of give your description, but it's almost like, first of all, the quality is fantastic, and it's you out with true stories or listening to them, but it feels like everything, the whole thing feels like you're in the room. Like I was listening, she was talking about how you guys didn't have a Ouija board and you kind of made one up, and there's noise in the background and just this little, like, it just is like being there with you guys at a campfire listening to a ghost story.
No, thank you so much. Yeah, it's essentially an audio documentary show. It's sort of like This American Life meets X-Files in a way. My friend Greg Newkirk called it this supernatural life or something like that. So that's the spirit of it. And essentially, aside from the first 2 episodes in this relaunched format, I'm there. I'm 100% at the scene. A lot of times I'm sleeping on the couch of these subjects or a motel just down the street. And I'm going deep out into the woods with people. I'm hiking Red Rock Mountains with people in search of vortexes. I'm wherever they are taking me, essentially. So I'm sort of learning I'm a very easy target. Actually, I'm starting to get a little conscious of that fact. But yeah, I'm 100% boots on the ground. So what you're hearing is me and those people face to face.
It's fantastic. And by the way, what that picture on, and I did listen in the other episodes, you have a great voice too. I really like soothing. It was kind of a soothing voice. I was like, I don't know if I'm scared or I like this. This is really good.
Oh, thank you so much.
The Facebook picture that you have up, which is like you, and it almost looks like you're in a canyon and there's like a jail behind you. First of all, everybody go to the Facebook page. And that, because that picture alone, where was that?
Oh, thank you. So that was taken by my producer, Tyler Carey. Now I don't get enough chances to shout out to Tyler. Tyler, essentially, you know, I get to go out and apologies again. This is a very long way to answer your very simple question.
That's okay.
But you know, I get to go out and experience this stuff, and then right afterwards, I'm on the phone with Tyler. He's based in LA, and we're talking about story. We're going over tape. We're figuring out what the story really feels like and what the episode feels like. And then Tyler edits it all. So he's doing a lot of the backbreaking creative work with me all the way through it. And he's also happens to be a fantastic photographer and videographer as well. So he's a great creative director. And that was him and I. We were down there. We were discussing and getting the vibe about what this new Euphomet is going to sound like and feel like. We went all the way out into Joshua Tree overnight, listened to Art Bell the whole time, just driving through the desert, just to get the, really get the vibe and get that funk on us. And then the next day we came back and we went to the old abandoned LA Zoo And so that's where that photo is taken. It's in one of the, I assume like maybe a monkey cage or like a lion. I don't know. Some sort of animal. Was very uncomfortable there for many years before it became the perfect place for a spooky picture.
Oh my God. I've lived in LA a long time, but that was the first time I went there. I went there the other night with Ryan Singer, as a matter of fact, and you tagged us both on Twitter, and we went there in the middle of the night, and it was it's, next time you're in LA, call us. We'll take you there in the middle of the night. And, Ryan was all about it. And he was like, yeah, we just got to watch out for bears and coyotes. And I was like, what do we, wait. So we'll take you there.
That's fantastic.
And I'm going to hold on to your last statement, which was you've become a target, because that already sounds like the next question I want. But let's get a little into who you are just before the paranormal. You are the owner of Defy Wrestling?
Yeah, I am. I own a punk rock pro wrestling promotion. Essentially, all across the world, independent pro wrestling has become a very big cultural activity. It's still fairly niche, but it is not what you see on TV. This isn't sort of WWE, and it's also not real like MMA or whatever. It's professional wrestling. It is theatrics, but the level of talent now and the vibe and the energy on the independent circuit is essentially like going to a very awesome punk show or a great EDM concert, or even sort of like a straight up like phenomenal play. Some of these guys are like the most athletic and gals, most athletic, tough, charismatic performers on the planet.
Right.
And so Seattle was like sort of I'm based in Seattle and Portland, and Seattle and Portland didn't have an answer to bringing some of the top talent from all over the world, whether that's luchadors from Mexico or Japanese talent, bringing all of these talent to one place and letting them mix it up and telling great stories and having a great time for those 21 and over that want to enjoy a beer or whatever else while enjoying this stuff. So it's fun. It's exhausting running these things, but I have a phenomenal team behind it, and that allows me to essentially travel most of the time and go out and look for ghosts and stuff and meet interesting people while Defy is running in the background. So,
boy, that is, that's like stand-up comedy for me became like, wow, this is a great venue to take me wherever. And, it's that, the funny thing too with the wrestling, it's like when people ask me about the ghost shows and they're like, are they faking that? Or is that, and my question is simply, were you entertained? That's all it's got to be.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And I'd imagine in Portland, you've been down the tunnels, correct?
I've never been to the Shanghai tunnels. Although I very much want to. What's interesting is there's a lot of places in the Pacific Northwest that, since I've been doing the show, I have on my list. A lot of it is I want to do a lot of these experiences when there's a human quality to it, a person I can feature. And so I'm looking for that now. I know there's an interesting story with someone contemporary that I can tie into some of this activity in some of these places like the Shanghai tunnels that I can then feature on the show. But yeah, it's one of the, have you been?
I have, and I've done 2 shows on the Shanghai tunnels because I worked at Harvey's, which is above the tunnels, and it's in a part of the tunnel that was locked off. So it wasn't even part of the tour, and it was pretty raw. And that whole thing, we went down there, and I think in 30 minutes talking to the guy from Harvey's, we got like 25 EVPs. Like it was unbelievable. That guy and Michael P. Jones, you talk to the people at Harvey's and Michael P. Jones, and it's phenomenal. It's really quite save that for a rainy day because it was really enjoyable. It was a little freaky, and I don't get freaked too much. I did a comedy thing where, they used to Shanghai people, drug them and drag them off. So I do a little comedy web series, and I was going to have somebody dragging me through the tunnel, and I was in the tunnel 2 seconds, and I was like, maybe we'll do this in another part of the building because it was a little creepy. But I think you'll get attached to that place. That's fantastic. And, it's good people too at both those. And Michael P. Jones runs the tours. He was fantastic storyteller.
All right.
So
Awesome.
we have where you are, we have the wrestling. Now you said that as you go around, you have become a target. What does that mean?
I guess I was just being a little glib in the fact that I find myself in situations that others might feel a little uncomfortable about, especially considering the subject matter.
Right.
So, I've gone to very remote places with mysterious people to see things that are beyond belief. So sometimes when you're taken out into the woods, an hour, you hope that you find a Bigfoot out there, and that it's not a knife or something else, something else worldly.
Right. Or a hunter with not good aim.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's kind of what I meant. And I guess one of the scariest things, and I've had friends that have had this experience too there that are paranormal investigators, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well with your investigations and
whatnot.
It's that sometimes the human element is essentially the most fascinating and the most dangerous part of all this stuff.
Yeah.
That's when reality kind of comes crashing down around you. And I've been very lucky. I choose my subjects very wisely. So I never feel that I'm in danger with my subject. But I was just recounting a story with your friend Ryan. So before you called, I was on the phone with Ryan.
Oh.
And he says hi. He says hi, by the way. Yeah.
He's right down he's 5 minutes from me, but yet we're saying hi through Seattle. But hi, Ryan. Good to hear from you again.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, here's the caveat. Actually, right now I'm in New Orleans right now on an investigation. So you're getting hi from him from there. So even further away. But, I was telling him yesterday, I was having an interview with Vampire, and I was bringing this vampire back to my hotel to get some clear interview tape. And there was a point where there's a very small elevator that goes up to my room, and it set in that I'm bringing a vampire back to the haunted hotel that I'm staying in the middle of the French Quarter, a block away from the Ursuline Covenant, which is the birthplace of a lot of modern American vampire stories. And so it sets in very quickly that, a lot of people would have issue with this.
A lot of things could go wrong in that situation. Yeah. Yes.
Right. Yeah. This is the start or ending of every horror movie ever. Right. And I'm just walking into it like a dumbass. So yeah, it's a good time.
Well, what's funny, what could be even worse is not just a vampire in your room, but a crazy person that thinks they're a vampire. That could be, you never know which one would be worse situation to be in.
Yeah.
But New Orleans, oh my God. So are you, I have not been there, and I'm overwhelmed with how badly I want to go there. Are you just looking at vampire stuff? Are you going to look into some voodoo, or what is happening? There's so much there.
This won't be my first time here for sure, because I got off the plane. I took a taxi to the French Quarter where I'm staying and was immediately overwhelmed by everything. So, first of all, you feel like you're in a foreign country out of nowhere. You took a short flight from New York and then you're somewhere else. And every corner has a witchcraft shop, a voodoo shop, etc. There's people dressed as pirates walking around who, that's just what they do. That's who they are. So people live loud out here. And I was immediately, to take a few steps back, this is the last sort of interview and stop of a trip that I've been doing for about 3 weeks now on the road for Euphomet. I leave and get to go home tomorrow. So coming into this town, I was already I don't know what reality is at this point. I'm just trying to do everything I can to stay grounded after what I've experienced the last several weeks and all the places I've been, all the people I've talked to. And, So the first thing I actually did was like, I'm gonna dive into this place, and but I'm also gonna try to sort of protect myself and have fun with it.
Right.
So the first thing I did was walk into a witchcraft shop, and I asked them, hey, I've never experienced vampiric energy. I've never experienced voodoo energy. What should I do to kind of protect myself if I'm like in a little bit more of a weakened state? And, of course, like they said, do whatever resonates with you, which was kind of helpful, but not really.
Right.
So I just went around. I picked up some rocks. I picked up this and that, kind of created a little bit of a little protection package for myself.
Right.
I'm not even saying that I believe in that 100% necessarily, but it was just something else. But, you're right in that it is a very overwhelming place. And although I came here to just talk to a vampire, this guy Czar, wonderful man, incredible human being, does a lot for the community, really shines a light on what a vampire really is and what really can be. I learned that there's vampire houses all over the world.
Wow.
Most are secret, but we have vampires walking the streets with us every day that consume human blood. It's not in the fashion that we see in movies, of course, most typically. Of course, there's like bad people everywhere, but, vampires are just like regular law-abiding citizens that have donors and go through a process and a ritual. And, so that's a thing now that is very real to me.
It's so funny because I always think, like I'm a big one saying the next generation is going to get it right when it comes to sexuality. They don't care, which you're very young. You might be part of this. They don't care who's gay or trans, or they have no judgment. And I think that's great. And just when you said that, I was going, who are the next people that are going to kind of come out of the closet and be like, yeah, we're real folks. It could be vampires. You could be opening the door for them.
Yeah, no, 100%. I asked him the question. He was sitting here in my hotel, and I said, when is it going to be that people look back on things like Blade the Vampire Hunter and go like, oh my God, that's atrocious. Like,
right.
How is this hero going around like just cutting the heads off of this marginalized community?
Right.
And that could, that realistically in 100 years or something could be a spectrum that we look through, could be a lens that we look back through history and time. But for now, it's, you hearing any of that?
I hear that. What is that?
Oh man, just thunder and lightning over here as I get all passionate and energetic about vampires.
Oh, wow. If that's really going on, leave it open. I think that I like that. That'll sound good. I'll tell you if it's distracting, but I can find that sound effect and add it in that sounds great.
Cool. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I'm telling you, like I'm in a haunted hotel right now.
What hotel is it?
I'm looking, it's a building in the, Hotel Provincial.
Oh,
and it's one of the back buildings. Yeah.
Everything there could be, I'm just imagine, and even after Katrina, it's just, everything's haunted.
Yeah, that is for sure. I mean, there is actually, to prove that point, when you look at real estate in this town and the signs from realtors, everything is so haunted that they actually put signs on the things that aren't haunted on their real estate listings.
That's interesting. I wonder what the law is there. I know different states have different laws on what you have to say or what you have to. That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah. Allegedly, full disclosure state. Yeah, they have to tell you whether it's haunted or not.
Wow. So
which is wild.
Yeah, it is. And here we have plenty of space in the living room. This is where someone killed themselves. And but
right.
we've removed the chandelier which they hung themselves from. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
And of course not to reveal too much from your episode, but when you meet the vampire, is this an energetic vampire or it's way beyond that?
This is a straight up drinks human blood vampire. It is not there. Okay. So these, this is going to turn into a dissertation on vampires very quickly, because I guess I've become an expert in the last 2 days on this subject material, but yeah, exactly.
Someone has to be.
But essentially, vampire communities, they're separated into groups or houses as what they identify themselves as. And these houses have a form of leadership. Some of them have one person in charge. I think most of them are a little bit more progressive and have a council or a group in charge. Very diplomatic sort of situation. And essentially, they all have their own rules and doctrine. I don't want to say dogma, but perhaps in some of them, most are not religiously affiliated. Most are not like sort of spiritual. In fact, Tsar's house, which I believe he's the leader of, it has folks from every sort of religious domination that you can think of, really. They have Christians. They have witches. They have all sorts. He's a voodoo priest. So they're really kind of like an open door policy, and they separate themselves from religion and spirituality in that way. Their belief is that being a vampire and consuming human blood is a physiological engagement, and that there are nutrients and sustenance they get from blood that they can't receive anywhere else. And it's more akin, their sort of affliction is more akin to something like an autoimmune disease or inflammation or something, as to where without it their thoughts are cloudy, they're sluggish, they don't have a lot of life. And essentially, the consumption of this blood is a remedy to that, and They feel better, and they feel more energized, Tsar, he drinks up to 8 ounces of human blood in one, in sort of one feeding, and so it's pretty close. That's pretty close to a can of soda. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just got soy milk out of my diet. Maybe I'm missing my blood. It's it would be interesting to find out if there is something scientific behind that, or if it's a placebo. I mean, everything, it's kind of like Andrew, the guy that does the food thing on Travel Channel. He's kind of like, well, you can kind of eat everything. And when you get down to it, it's really all just cells and atoms, however it works. But how do they obviously there has to be a humane way to get the blood, right? We're not, that would be quite interesting if he was like, no, we just kill somebody.
Yeah, I know, right? That would take that visit in my hotel room in a different direction. But
or great promotion for the podcast.
Right, exactly. Yeah, awesome tape. They have they're very civilized. At least Tsar and his counterparts are very similar. They have donors. They have donors that reach out to them. They agree to or offer to donate their blood. They have a process that involves a screening process that involves medical testing. They have to get a lot of their, they have to make sure they're in good health.
Right. No diseases.
They also have to, right, exactly. And they have to, they can't drink, they can't do drugs. There's a lot of qualifiers. They have to stick to a certain diet. Some of that is taste driven, though, the diet thing.
Wow.
As you can imagine, like any other, sort of substance, like what you put in, like affects what's put out. So there's a process. You know what I mean? There's a real process. They sign contracts, so there's even a legal element to it.
Well,
they're very civilized.
Yeah. And they must have somebody that is a nurse or knows how to draw blood. I mean, right? Maybe?
Some, perhaps. Tsar is not one of them. Tsar collects the blood himself. Usually that's through a Now, so I didn't see this firsthand. That's something we didn't do. But what essentially happens is he takes a brand new sharp object, like a razor, a medical blade, or whatever else, and then he makes, sort of after cleaning the spot, everything else, and then disinfecting and making sure his, mouth is properly clean as well.
Oh.
He makes, he makes an incision or several pokes, usually several pokes, light pokes to the skin are enough. But sometimes he does have to make an incision to draw the blood from, and then he puts his mouth on the subject and he it comes out into his mouth. He doesn't quite suck it, I guess, but it just kind of flows into his mouth.
I have to tell you, for a second there, I was like, you know what? I would do this just to see what it was like. Like, I was kind of like, what is that? You know what I mean? Like, okay, I shouldn't probably, but for a second I was like, this is kind of fascinating.
Yeah. Well, you're, braver than me. I didn't, I didn't even want to put it out to the universe that it was like maybe a possibility that I do it. I am, I think, like,
it's okay. I'm vegan.
Embedded enough.
Yeah. I'm a little vegan, so they probably wouldn't want me anyways. They'd be like, oh, this is very thin blood. Wow. Fascinating. I just want to ask one more question about Czar, and then I'm going to get back to you. Mm-hmm. What is his day job?
His day job is, so he's as I mentioned, he's a voodoo priest.
Oh,
and he happens to work at at one of the voodoo shops here in town, one of the more notable voodoo shops. And so a part of that process actually is, they of course like sell things. They sell dolls and all sorts of, sort of African statues and things that have spiritual nature and voodoo to the voodoo practice and other African spiritual elements really. But he also, he does healings. He does voodoo-based healings, and so that's his day job, wow. And he's doing it all the time. And so the great story about Czar, though, and what made him a Euphomet story is his connection to the community, though. So instead of feeding on the homeless, as people think vampires would do, he actually feeds the homeless. Wow. His house is involved in all sorts of charitable community efforts. They help with housing and placement of at-risk youth and folks with disabilities, and drug issues. They feed the streets, not just the homeless, but they feed the hungry here in New Orleans. And so it's really, he's a true manifestation of someone living a very transparent life. He's had a lot of things he's had to battle in terms of being that way, because it's not always met with the warmest of welcomes when you're just being yourself sometimes.
Yeah, hey, people still don't like redheads sometimes. I can't imagine being a vampire,
Right?
It would be tough.
Exactly.
I'm glad he works though. That's a very interesting. I wonder what that healing, because I do Reiki, or I used to do more Reiki. I don't do it as much anymore. But that would be very interesting. I'm glad you said he works at a voodoo shop, because I was thinking like if it's customer service at Verizon or something, it's, you know what I mean? It's kind of out there, but this is, it's a whole life. So that's really cool. Well, good for him. That's fascinating. So now let's talk about you. So have you had any paranormal experiences that led you to this, or just that curiosity and I want to get into this and I want to start it?
Oh, it's interesting. Just a few days ago, I realized I had a little bit more paranormal experience than I gave myself credit for, even within the last couple of years. And very routinely, in my household as a child, my mom would walk up to the telephone and start having a conversation with my grandmother before the phone would ring.
Oh.
And that would happen, if not daily, several times a week. And it would happen with my grandma as well. My grandma would go to the phone, start talking to my mom before the phone would ring. They would know when each other was calling on instinct alone, all day long. And they both have, my grandma recently passed away, but they both were connected in a way that felt and there was evidence that was very supernatural. Something else was going on there.
Right.
So I think at a very early age, I just thought that was normal. I thought that was regular. I thought like, well, every mom is like tuned in,
Yeah.
It's just a thing. And so I think while I was younger, I probably even had more experiences in that vein, sort of psychically or empathically, that didn't even resonate with me as something that was out of bounds, but just seemed like something that was, well, this is a part of life. It's a little weird sometimes. So what I think happened is having an open mind and being very fertile to those ideas really made things like Art Bell and reruns of It's in Search of and Unsolved Mysteries and all these things like really resonate with me when I was really young. and really create an environment where anything was sort of possible. Now, it wasn't until later, and when I started doing Euphomet, the first incarnation of it, which I think started maybe in 2014, that I really opened myself up to more experiences. And instead of doing the sort of, how do I explain this? You know, when you're a kid, sometimes you're excited to get scared, and you kind of do stuff with your friends to get yourself scared. And then the reality of that like starts getting a little hazy about what you were just doing to scare yourself and what was real, what you were really experiencing. I think I finally had an opportunity to really, alone, on my own, discover the difference between real phenomenon and experiences and things that are more sort of generated. The scariest part of that is most recently, I've discovered that the divide between those two things are perhaps much smaller than what I thought. And that a lot of this could be based on intent and how open we are to certain things, and maybe manifestation is real in some degree.
Yes.
And that we are creating and filtering through this environment and reality some of these experiences. And so, yeah, long way to answer that one, but
no, you're fascinating. This is great. And also, I kind of feel like when you create that energy of fear, you attract something that feeds on it. Like I think it was Michelle Belanger was saying how demons are they are something that eats fear. So if you have fear and you're afraid, of course, they will create it also. But that is what that would make sense. You start to get scared, and then all of a sudden, you hear a noise and something gets different. But yeah, that sounds right. I have to laugh when you were saying, of course, all moms talk to their mom telepathically. Who doesn't do that? Because my best friend's an animal communicator, and she's always like, I thought everyone was talking to chickens. I thought everyone knew what they were saying when I was little. And it's like, no, not everyone. So you sort of had a propensity for it, so shall we say. Have you had anything follow you home yet, or anything where you were like, oh, I got to shake this vibe off?
I'm still discovering that, is the way I can answer that. Maybe. Most recently, after a trip to the Stanley Hotel for an episode, I think it was maybe episode 6 or 7. It's called Haunted Hearts. I went to the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. This is, of course, the setting for Stephen King's book, The Shining. Yeah. Very active, to say that ghost investigation there and the idea and notion of it being haunted is a big deal, is like actually an understatement. It's notorious in that way, both culturally and realistically. So I'd like to make that like sort of clear. Like sometimes fact and fiction kind of come together to create something even bigger, maybe.
Right.
So I'm sitting there. We're doing a seance with this new divination technique created by Carl Pfeiffer and Connor Randalls. And
I'm going to ask about that. I'm going to ask what that is.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's worth talking about. We're sitting there and we're performing it. And, I also realized that at some point in the night, I have to sleep in this room and they're going to go home.
Right.
So there's that. And we're sitting there and we're communing with something perhaps. And I'm loaded up with all these stories about these relationships they've built with certain ghosts or entities there. And, I go home a few days later, fly from Colorado to Portland. And then a lot of people don't know my home base is on the Oregon coast now. And so drive back to the Oregon coast, get all set up and everything else. And I think I start seeing shadows for the first time.
Mm.
And what's interesting is that I'm coming to find out that I don't think it followed me home. I think it was there. And what was going on at the time, and since you have friends that commune with animals, you'll probably resonate with this. At that time, our cat was really sick, and the shadow started to appear. We didn't really know what was going on with the cat, but she started hanging out in weird places, kind of as they do when they're sick. I'm sitting there and I'm editing that show from the Stanley, and I'm all, I'm still feeling, that interaction in that haunted hotel and what we were experiencing with some of the spirits there, perhaps. And I start seeing shadows by the doorway behind my cat, who's now laying kind of in the middle of my floor in the studio. And I take this a little bit of time. I go and I hang out with the cat a little bit, and I spend a little bit of time with her. I take her collar off her neck. It's got a bell. And so I was trying to record my billboards at the time, and I didn't want cat bells, going off the background. So I set it on my desk. And those shadows just kept kind of the next few days, like they kept kind of coming around. I sort of started noticing in the corner, sort of on the peripheral vision, in the corner of your eye, just a little bit of a fragmentation of light or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to say it was a shadow person. I'm not going to say it was even a spirit. I don't know what it was. Could have been just a trick of the eye, an illusion. But essentially, shortly after that, I was on my next trip, and my cat passed away. And, it was very sad. I was away. My wife had to deal with it while I was away.
Right.
And it was a very sad time. She was 15 years old. It was like really a killer. I came back. I was working on the next show. I was in the studio, and I can start hearing like her bells every once in a while. And that's followed with like a little bit of like that similar shadow thing.
Right.
And sort of coordination. And I was talking to a friend of mine, John Tenney, and he's a very notable paranormal researcher, and had his own experience with like sort of animals and their energy. And he said, maybe that's not something that you brought with you back from the Stanley. That maybe that's something that was there actually for your cat.
Yeah.
Maybe that was something that was there for her to help her get to the next side. Because after she was gone, and it kind of came back to me, maybe once, maybe twice, with a little bit of a bell, okay, like my mind's playing tricks on me kind of thing, is gone. But it was just enough to like kind of say like, hey, I'm here, and hey, I'm goodbye, and I did think for a second that I brought something home with me, but I think it was a little more than that. So yeah. Just brought that to mind.
And I'm a big animal person, and everybody knows I go everywhere with my dog, and he's 15. In fact, we're on the way for his senior blood check after this podcast. But so I do work a lot with my friend that's an animal communicator, and I have two theories on that. And by the way, on my podcast, we're all in. We believe you. I always tell people if you've got tiny men in your cabinet making cookies, call me, tell me, I'm all in. I don't disregard anyone's story. You have to be really bad for me to shut you off, or really boring, one of the two. But I do think, and especially we have found, and I have seen, when I go into the kitchen and my dog's in the bedroom, he always comes into the kitchen and sits where I can see him right at the doorway, like, what are we eating? And we have a theory that they're out of their body a lot more than we know. And I have turned around and saw him sitting there, and then turned back and he was gone, and he's asleep in the other room. So we sort of have these theories that animals can leave their body. So that may have been, especially if she was sick, herself sort of over her body,
Yeah.
but I also think the more you do this, the more you investigate, the more you sort of keep taking away layers of your own disbelief, you start to see things that might be elemental spirits or something that runs through the house, or there's so much. I feel like we occupy the same space as not just the dead, but a lot of other things. So when the veil starts to get thinner, everything doesn't look like what it's supposed to. But it almost sounds like it really was your cat kind of in and out and just still around you.
Yeah. Yeah. It felt like that. It wasn't a feeling of, and honestly, I think you summed it up like really well. And I think as the veil thins, I'm having this experience, especially being around so many people and having so many, notably different and disparate experiences in different forms, that a lot of it is feeling the same. And a lot of it, I'm lucky, as in like, I haven't felt anything explicitly malevolent.
Right.
There's one exception to that, but for the most part, I think my intent is as such that it's helped me procure a lot of sort of support, maybe.
Protection.
But then again, like, yeah. And again, like, I think it's very, and I say this when I start getting into like sort of belief systems and stuff like that Euphomet, its whole thing is to not like sort of prove or disprove anything. It's about the stories. It's about the individuals. That's what's paramount. And it's not about evidence or anything else. So I try to apply that to my own life. I try to do that by way of 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So one of the things that me and the Newkirks will talk about a lot together, they're paranormal researchers, and they own the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult.
Oh yes, you were talking about a doll that had nails in its eyes or something like that.
Yeah. Yes. And it's very, we're very pretty grounded, like normal people. And it's important for us to stay that way. It really is, because I think without that, I'm not able to communicate with normal people if I get too far out on a ledge. But it's always there. That precipice is always calling a little bit. So it's very interesting. And I am, I think, critical of myself on how far on the ledge I will go at this point. Just because it's the universe, the tricky bastard it is always giving me a wink and a nudge and saying like, come on, let's play. And I'm realizing I can choose when I want to play and when I don't.
Yeah.
So.
And it's funny because I know I talk to a lot of investigators, and everybody, it's sort of like in this field, we've been made so much fun of. In fact, when I do my comedy, Ryan's probably the same. People go, how can you comedy is based on reality, and you're the only person that can go up and say, so I found out I have alien DNA. And the crowd just goes, she looks like she would have alien DNA. And it's because it's my truth. You know what I mean? It is my truth. So everybody's like, yep, sounds right. But a lot of times I will hear paranormal investigators immediately go, well, we're skeptics, right? And I always think, I don't know if we need that label anymore, because I'm not the last one to say everything's a demon or everything's that orb is dust. That one, I don't know. But we're all we don't want to go out on a limb with crazy, a story. I'll listen to all your stories. I'm not going to show you something that is, my favorite story is taking a picture in a place and spending 2 hours debunking that it turned out the thing that was odd was a reflection off my shoe. So that's you know what I mean? That's what
riveting.
Yes. Don't wear shiny shoes, investigators. No shiny shoes. But that is, it sounds like you have enough instinct also, because like I have no desire to go to Bobby Mackey's. Have you been there, or is it on your list or something?
It's not right now, but I am aware of it. And who knows? I mean, if there's the right human story related to it, then absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah. I was supposed to do a paranormal convention there. And I said yes. And it was like the universe roadblocked me like you would not believe. All of a sudden the rental cars were way too expensive and the this and the that. It was very, very interesting, but I love your cautiousness as you go through. And also I just don't think when we talk about most things that you find, if they're in the LA Zoo, they mostly want to stay at the LA Zoo. So it's, you know what I mean? It's dangerous, but it's not. So, now you guys said you said you had a new, divination process. Tell.
So, it's funny that this has been seen on TV and some other spots, but it's, I can say it cause I'm not one of the creators of it or whatever. It's been ripped off, like essentially,
like everything.
Some of the things that have been seen on TV and everything else. So, Carl and Connor were the resident investigators and tour guides at the Stanley Hotel for years. And essentially, they would use that time when they were doing tours to stay extra time at that spot. So they have essentially put in some of the most man hours in one of the most haunted places in the nation for sure. And so they've been on foot. They've been doing the work. They've had the opportunity to sort of do this very long form study. And to them, it is important to find evidence and to corroborate stories with experiences because that's their job. That's their role. And so they adapted a few different techniques for divination. There's this thing called the black box you might be familiar with. For your audience that doesn't know about it, it's essentially like a radio with a broken tuner. Yeah. That it scans and scans and scans. Yeah. Yeah. Picks up certain words and certain blips. That'll be just a back, gap, Greg, it'll pick up certain elements. Sometimes full phrases, sometimes sentences, sometimes just words, and it'll do that on a continual loop. Now, usually when people use this in practice as an investigation, they kind of set it out in the middle of a room, they turn it on, the crowd sort of assembles, and people ask it things, just into the ether. And it'll say stuff or not, and people will pick up on it in the crowd, and people will get excited, whatever else. These guys have found a way to take it into a more personal space and away from sort of that collective consciousness, sort of corroborative sort of environment. And that way it defines the evidence a lot better. And it actually takes out like sort of a middleman in that equation. So what they do is they hook that thing up to a pair of headphones. They grab some blindfold and they put this on someone that's going to be their whole job is to just say whatever comes up through the scanner, through the black box. But they can't hear or see anything that the people that are asking the questions are actually saying.
Fascinating.
And so while I was there, Connor put on the headphones, put on the blindfold, and sat in the chair, kind of rocking back and forth. It's kind of a hypnotic scenario, and just started spouting out things that he would hear, and it'd be little bits of pieces of things. Some things didn't even say, he would just be free flowing this. And he's very good at it, very well practiced. And then Carl and myself, I was sitting on my bed, recording. Carl was asking him questions. And
just,
we were waiting to see.
Not to interrupt you, what room was this? Because I know that there's you. I'm guessing you were in one of these specific rooms.
I don't think I was. I mean, my room had activity in it, based upon things that Carl and Connor had seen. Okay. But I was on the 4th floor, which a lot of people don't know is the most haunted floor of the Stanley. This is where the staff of the building would stay. And back when it was a part of the Stanley, vacation home, essentially for their friends, the wealthy elite of the world, the Gilded Age, that's where all the children would stay as well. So it's the most energized, and has the most activity out of any floor, aside from some of the other, buildings next to it, the galleries and such.
Yeah, they have a little theater that I found especially active. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. You're correct about that for sure. And so we were going through this experiment, and there would be things that would pop up, like my name would come up several times. Carl's name would come up several times. One point it said, "Jim, are you recording this?" As I stand there with my full recording set up, and me saying, "Yeah." But what was really interesting is that despite all the things that happened that night and things that were said, little bits and pieces of fragmented conversation and questions answered, which was captivating to me, being uninitiated, but for Carl and Connor was nothing. Like, they weren't even happy with it. They said, not really. We didn't really produce any results tonight. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, I'm saying, like, said my name a bunch. That's just not on radio or whatever all the time.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, well, we've had conversations back and forth, in-depth conversations that have lasted like an hour and a half.
Wow.
So this is nothing compared to what we usually get.
Which means they have to be on this podcast now. Now they have to be on this podcast.
Yeah, no, I recommend them. They're great investigators. They're doing the real work. They're doing things their own way. They're doing it with also a creativity, I think, and a polish that is very much needed in sort of like the paranormal community. So yeah, I recommend for sure. But anyway, they've created that and tested that form of divination. It's called the Estes method. That's what that's called. So based off the location of the Stanley, which is Estes Park, Colorado.
Got it. Which, by the way, also just a gorgeous place.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's something off of a postcard for sure. It doesn't even seem real.
Yeah, and I remember my flight was early and leaving early, and I had to stop in the street for a couple of moose.
Yeah, you're out there. What was your impression of the Stanley Hotel?
We were mostly in the little theater, and I became very fascinated with that. And a couple of people had rented rooms, which were, they always say, stay in this room, or Jim Carrey ran out of this room. But I didn't get to spend as much time there. But I will tell you, the theater was enough. We had people in the theater, down beneath the theater, and in the back of the theater. We had 3 groups rotating, and we spent all night there. And it was really fascinating. It was really active. Yeah. Everything felt so active.
Depending on when you were there, you could have ran into Carl or Connor as one of the tour guides there. The theater is one of the main places that they always took folks, and that's where they would experience Lucy and Eddie, yep, and several other spirits that were essentially kind of mainstays there, in which they corroborated a lot of evidence and a lot of stories, and they also debunked some stories about some of those entities too, in terms of what their real stories and relationships could have been. And it only made them closer to these entities and stories, and it certainly transformed what the experience of those in attendance were. Once they started to reveal some of the real stories behind these people.
Wow, so, fascinating. Yeah, I would love to, and I would love to have them talk about their method too. I know almost all of my jokes that I do have been about like crystals and stuff have been stolen and put on Tumblr. So, it's like, oh, well, you know what I mean? So I'd like to, that sounds fascinating. Oh, that's great. Okay. So now before we wrap up, cause I could talk to you forever. Lastly, what would be if I could investigate anywhere, what would it be? And I'll tell you mine. You tell me yours, I'll tell you mine.
Oh boy. The South is so
yes.
The South is so haunted, I'm spending so much time in Kentucky and, West Virginia. I guess West Virginia is kind of the South. I don't know when it starts and ends. I don't know if people know like where it starts and ends.
Yeah. West Virginia, you got to do your Mothman stuff down in West Virginia.
I did the Mothman stuff. I was out in the TNT area. I was at where the bridge collapsed. I was out in the middle of the night in the TNT area.
Wow.
where the kids and everyone saw the Mothman. So definitely went down that road. And
what episode number is that? Do you don't know offhand? Well, we'll find it. I'm going to listen to all of them. I'll find it.
No, number 9.
Number 9. Okay.
Number 9. I actually remember the one. That's very rare for me to know the number, but that's number 9. And that was with Greg and Dana Newkirk. We went out there and explored that and explored their relationship and how the Mothman was a big part of that and how they got together as a couple and creative partners and life partners and everything else. And the Mothman being a harbinger is not always the harbinger for bad things.
Right.
Turns out like Mothman could be the harbinger for good things too. And I think that's a parallel to a lot of the other parts of supernatural experience or unknown experience, that it is not always a bad thing.
Right.
It can be a good thing for sure.
Well, my ultimate place, which is probably in poor taste, but we do a lot of, we're talking about places where horrible things happen, but I don't want to do any military tours. I've done a lot of military tours in comedy, and I'm sort of just taking the time I have with my pup while I have him, so I don't leave the country.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of time they take you on tours in Iraq, and a lot of people have gotten to go through Saddam Hussein's castles. And
oh man,
I know, but I know that there's probably all kinds of restrictions, and I would have to be careful. Like I fell down right upon the record button. But cause it's kind of tacky, and I know there's a lot of, I think you can't take pictures in there also. So, it may not ever happen, but, I always thought that would be a very, it's got every quality. It's got people that speak a different language. It's got fear. He was feared. You know what I mean? It was his home. There's just a lot of, chaos, and I am way too fascinated with jinn and in Middle Eastern stuff. So that would be my ultimate in a. But then again, you never know, right?
Yeah, I mean, you brought up. That's a great point, though, because I think in general, internationally, at least for the stories here in the West about the paranormal and some of these activities, I think that there's still an entire world out there that is not in like sort of our popular consciousness or sphere of some of these stories. I mean, you think about a lot of paranormal fans, and these are the ones that maybe their involvement in this is they just listen to podcasts, or maybe their involvement is they just watch TV shows, or maybe the books. When you look at a lot of TV shows and podcasts and stuff like that, they're very based here. You know what I mean? And very based on like some of the regional hotspots we have, some of these towns and some of these little weird places outside of Cincinnati. And you don't hear a lot about like the wild, sort of family in Ireland that decided to make the foundation of their house off of a bunch of tombstones, and then what happened after that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there's a lot. That's the thing too, is that everybody essentially has a story. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm sure you get this a lot. You get the person that finds out you're involved in this sort of stuff, and then they go, "Hey, there was this time."
Yeah.
And like, "Hey, I don't tell a lot of people this, but
yeah,
there's a lot of that." And so for me as a storyteller, and I'm sure you probably feel the same way, that's really exciting that there's so much that hasn't been told yet.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And people know I'm fairy obsessed. In fact, probably a couple episodes before this one, I talked to Joshua Cutchin, and we're talking about the missing 411, and he has a book connecting it to fairies. And I know in this country, when someone says fairies, everyone goes, "What? Are you talking about Snow White? What are you talking about?" And that's a whole, who knows? Maybe someday Jim Perry and I will be in Ireland talking to a fairy. Who knows? Right?
It's possible. It is 100% possible. Listen, the idea, the abstraction of a lot of these fantastical archetypes, fairies, goblins, trolls, these things that have lived in war for just seemingly millennia. There is something to these, And I think just because they're not like sort of in the popular wheelhouse per se of some of the paranormal topics, I don't think that makes them any less relevant than things like Sasquatch or ETs, you know? And I think what's more interesting about fairies, for example, is that their inclusion in so many of the mystical traditions as well. Right. You know, so these are stories that really, really, really go back far and go into very deep places. When you start looking into like some of the Kabbalistic traditions and their thoughts about what fairy forms are, get out of here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it goes really deep. And yet you still have people within 3D reality saying like, hey, no, there was a fairy back there, and I had an experience with one. So that's fascinating. That just gets my creative wheel spinning 100%.
Yeah, it does.
Let's go to Ireland.
It's great. I know. Let's go. Hey, listen, wonderful talking to you. Anytime you got something to promote or you're whatever, please call us here at Paranormal Karen. I say us. It's me. Please call me. And my 17 personalities. Just great talking to you. Let's get all your stuff out there. First of all, folks, if you're on Twitter, it's Jim Perry at ITSJIMPERRY. Everything is there. You're going to want to follow all the other Twitter things. Check out the Facebook page. And yes, I'm going to spell it for you in a second. The podcast is EUPHOMET. EUPHOMET. And we will have all the links in the description for this episode. And, my God, that was just fantastic. Great talking to you, Jim.
Great talking to you. I look forward to coming on again and sharing all sorts of crazy stuff with you.
Yes. And if you're in LA, please, let's go do something horrible.
For sure. I'm into it. I'm into it.
Hey, everybody, thanks for listening in. Oh, wow, that was exciting. Now I have a whole bunch of people a whole bunch of episodes coming up. Jim Perry, ladies and gentlemen. All right, folks, like I said before, get your free download of Psychic Stand-Up with me and Lamont Ferguson, or you can get a tarot reading. It's all at karenrontowski.com or paranormalkaren.com. Thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Media. I think I got all. I always forget my promotions. After Thanksgiving weekend, I will be in the Poconos with at Mohegan Sun at Wisecrackers with Sonia King. I hope this is coming up before then. Ogden, Utah, Wise Guys, November 9th and 10th, and Pensacola, Florida, doing a fundraiser for autism with, again, Sonia King. Everybody have a great day. And remember, when you have the choice, I can't remember my own catchphrase. When you have a choice, never choose normal. That's my catchphrase. Never choose normal. Bye, everybody. People are always asking me, Karen, you are so knowledgeable about tarot, ghosts, and otherworldly spirits. How do you stay so organized and grounded here on Earth? And I have to tell them my secret weapon. It's black tourmaline. And Nita over at nitaapple.com. After years of complaining about all the text messages and emails back and forth, trying to schedule tarot readings and chasing after payments, Nita installed Acuity Scheduler on my website, and now I just get a little ding on my phone, and that tells me someone has made an appointment and the money is already in my account. I love that little ding, except every time it goes off, Courage runs to his food bowl. 5 minutes with Nita can save you 5 hours of bumbling around and trying to do things yourself. So if you spend 10 minutes with her, that'll save you like 72 hours or something like that. I don't know, I'm not good with math, but you know who is? Nita. That's who I would ask. Want to end all the emails back and forth and get paid up front when clients schedule time with you? Then hop on over to nitaapple.com/services and let Nita get you set up with a simple system that will make your life so much easier. Use coupon code BOO4U and get 20% off any products or services. She's got a lot of services and products that can save you time and money. That's BOO4U, all lowercase, BOO, the number 4, the letter U, and get 20% off. That's Nita Apple at nitaapple.com/services. nitaapple.com/services. and make your life easier today.